The sun was sinking behind the jagged hills, painting the sky in shades of fiery orange and deep purple, when Jake rode along the winding trail that hugged the river. The day had been long and grueling. The scorching heat of the plains had beaten down on him, his horse's hooves kicking up clouds of dust, and his throat was parched from hours of riding. He was a man used to solitude, the open land his only companion, yet today something felt different. There was a tension in the air, a subtle shift that made him slow his horse and strain his ears. Somewhere ahead the river's current whispered secrets, and then he heard it, a sound that sliced through the quiet like a knife. It was a cry, sharp and terrified, carried on the wind. His horse whinnied nervously, and Jake's heart leapt into his throat. He knew that sound. He had heard it in dreams, in the stories of men who had lost loved ones to the wild, and he knew it meant someone was in danger. He spurred his horse forward, the familiar thud of hooves against the rocky ground echoing in his chest. His eyes scanned the river bank, the glint of the setting sun reflecting off the water, and there she was, a girl no more than 16, her small frame barely keeping afloat against the raging current. Panic clawed at him, but there was no time to think. Every second counted. He could see the terror in her wide, dark eyes, the desperation as her hands clawed at the water, trying to grasp anything that would pull her to safety. Her long black hair was plastered to her face and neck, tangled with mud and river debris, and her clothes clung to her, soaked through, making every movement harder. The river, swollen from recent rains, roared like a beast, pulling her further downstream, its icy water numbing her limbs. Jake didn't hesitate. He kicked his horse's flanks, urging it into a gallop along the riverbank. He could feel the wind whipping his face, his chest pounding, the weight of fear and urgency pressing on him. With every stride, he calculated the distance, gauging how far he had to reach her before the current claimed her. The bank was slick with mud and stones, treacherous to navigate, but his boots found grip as he ran, his mind singularly focused on the girl. Then, without warning, a branch snapped underfoot, startling both him and his horse. The girl flinched at the sound, panicked, and slipped further into the water. Jake's heart stopped for a moment. He yelled her name, but the sound of the river swallowed it. He ran faster, the ground beneath him unstable, every rock threatening to send him tumbling. His arms ached from holding the reins tightly, but he didn't dare slow. The urgency was raw, primal. This was not just another day on the plains. This was life and death, and he could not fail. He reached the edge of the water and dismounted, feeling the cold seep into his bones even through his worn leather boots. The girl was only a few feet away, but the current was merciless, tugging at her with invisible hands, spinning her in circles, threatening to pull her under at any moment. Jake's eyes narrowed, and he took a deep breath, steadying himself. Every instinct in his body screamed at him to dive in, to reach her before it was too late. The water lapped at his knees as he waded forward, icy and merciless, each step a battle against the relentless pull of the river. "Hold on, hold on," he shouted, his voice cracking. But he knew she could barely hear him over the roar of the water. Her eyes met his, and for a brief instant, terror gave way to a flicker of hope. She stretched out her small, trembling hands, and he lunged forward, grasping her wrist with a grip like iron. The current twisted around them, threatening to drag them apart, and Jake felt the river's strength push him to his limits. But he refused to yield. He pulled with every ounce of strength, anchoring himself against the riverbed, muscles screaming in protest, lungs burning as he dragged her toward the shore. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, his boots hit firmer ground and he fell forward, collapsing onto the muddy bank with the girl cradled in his arms. She shivered violently, the cold and fear overtaking her, and Jake wrapped his jacket around her, pressing her to his chest to warm her. Her teeth chattered, and she clung to him, small hands gripping his wet coat, and for a moment the world felt suspended. The roar of the river faded into the background, replaced by the sound of her ragged breathing and the pounding of his own heart. He looked down at her face, water dripping from her hair, and saw the pale streaks of mud, the redness of cold-stung skin, and the wide, fearful eyes that now brimmed with tears. "You're safe now," he murmured, his voice gentle but firm, trying to convey a calm he didn't entirely feel. "I've got you. You're safe." She sniffled and whispered almost inaudibly, "Thank you." The simplicity of the word struck him harder than any danger he had faced that day. For a man who had lived most of his life in solitude, drifting from town to town, the sound of genuine gratitude was almost overwhelming. Jake helped her to her feet, guiding her away from the river's edge and onto the slightly firmer ground further inland. She leaned heavily on him, exhausted from the struggle, and he noticed the scratches along her arms, the bruises forming from the river's violent grasp. He had seen danger before, storms, wild animals, even violent men. But there was something raw and pure about this moment, the sheer vulnerability of a life hanging by a thread, and it pressed on him in a way he had never felt. As they moved away from the water, he took in the surroundings. The river, now calm in its retreat, shimmered in the dying light, reflecting the colors of the sky. The banks were littered with broken branches, rocks slick with moss, and the occasional wildflower that had survived the season's harshness. Somewhere in the distance, a hawk cried, circling lazily above the hills, oblivious to the small drama unfolding below. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. This was no longer just another day in the wilderness. This was a test of his courage, his skill, and his heart. The girl's breathing began to steady as they walked, and she finally looked up at him, eyes wide with a mixture of fear, awe, and curiosity. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice quivering. Jake shrugged, unsure of what to say. Names seemed trivial in moments like this, unnecessary in the face of survival. "Just someone who didn't want to see you drown," he said instead. She nodded slowly, processing the words, and for the first time a small, tentative smile touched her lips. As the sun disappeared completely behind the hills, shadows stretched long across the landscape, and the first stars began to prick the sky. Jake knew they couldn't stay here. The night in the wilderness could be cruel and unforgiving. He scanned the horizon, trying to find a safe place, and spotted a small grove of trees not far off. "We'll rest there," he said, guiding her carefully. She nodded, trusting him implicitly, and for a man who had lived on his own terms for years, that trust felt like a gift more valuable than any he had ever received. When they reached the grove, Jake helped her sit on a fallen log, brushing dirt and debris from her clothes as best he could. He built a small fire from dry branches, the crackling flames bringing warmth and a faint sense of security. She huddled close to it, and he watched the firelight dance across her features, soft, delicate, yet marked with the resilience of someone who had survived more than he could imagine. The world outside the grove seemed distant, dangerous, and yet here in the firelight there was a fragile sanctuary. Hours passed as he tended the fire, his mind replaying the events of the day. He thought of the river, the force of the current, the near loss of a life, and the raw fear in her eyes. He realized that heroism wasn't something grand or celebrated. It was in these small, decisive moments, in the willingness to step forward when someone else's life depended on it. And as he watched the girl slowly regain her composure, he felt an unfamiliar stirring in his chest, something beyond pride or relief. There was a connection forming, silent but undeniable, a bond forged in the crucible of shared danger. Finally, the girl leaned back, her head resting against the log, eyes drooping with exhaustion. Jake gave her a reassuring nod. "Get some rest," he said softly. "You're safe. I'll keep watch." She murmured a faint thank you before closing her eyes, and Jake settled near the fire, staring into the flames, contemplating the strange twists of fate that had led him to this moment. The night was quiet now, the river's roar reduced to a distant murmur, the world holding its breath as if respecting the fragility of life. Jake didn't know what the morning would bring, nor did he know the journey that awaited both of them. All he knew was that he had acted when it mattered, and that sometimes in the vast wilderness, courage and compassion were the only things that could carve a path through the chaos of life. And in that moment, as the fire flickered and shadows danced across the grove, he felt a sense of peace, fragile yet profound, knowing he had saved a life and, perhaps unknowingly, changed both their destinies forever. The first light of dawn spilled across the river valley, painting the landscape in soft hues of gold and lavender. The world seemed to breathe slowly, the crisp morning air filled with the scent of wet earth, moss, and the lingering aroma of the river from the night before. Jake stirred, waking to the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze and the faint cry of a distant bird. The girl had slept peacefully, curled near the fire, her head resting on the fallen log. For a moment he allowed himself to relax, letting the tension of yesterday's near tragedy wash. The leader of the group rode slightly ahead, an elder with a commanding presence. His eyes, dark and penetrating, scanned the riverbank with precision and then, almost impossibly, They met Jake's. There was recognition there, not of him personally, but of the event that had unfolded, the rescue of the girl from the river. Jake's heart skipped a beat. He had saved her, yes, but he had no idea who she truly was or what her people might do in response. His mind raced through possible outcomes. These could be people of gratitude or suspicion, and yet, the way they approached, their pace measured, gave no hint of hostility. The girl shifted nervously, whispering, They're coming for me." Her words were a mix of fear and awe, and Jake nodded gently. "It's okay. I think they're here to help, not harm," he said, though even he couldn't be entirely certain. The riders slowed as they neared the riverbank, forming a semicircle around him and the girl. The morning sun caught the beads and feathers on their garments, casting a kaleidoscope of color that made the scene almost dreamlike. Each tribe represented a different lineage, yet they moved in perfect coordination, a testament to shared purpose and deep respect for tradition. The elder dismounted first, his boots hitting the ground with quiet authority. He approached Jake, the girl stepping back instinctively, yet he held up a hand in reassurance. "You saved our child," the elder said, his voice calm, resonant, carrying a weight that made the air itself seem heavier. "For this we bring our gratitude." Jake's mouth went dry. Words failed him. He had expected suspicion, perhaps questions, but not this. An acknowledgement that transcended language, rooted in honor and tradition. He bowed slightly, the only gesture he could offer in response. One by one, the tribes dismounted, their movements deliberate, almost ceremonial. They carried gifts, each wrapped in cloth and adorned with feathers, herbs, and stones. The variety was staggering. Handcrafted jewelry, intricately woven blankets, medicinal herbs, and tools carved from bone and wood. Each offering was a symbol, a message. Respect, thanks, and acknowledgement of the bond that had been forged in the crucible of danger. Jake felt a lump in his throat, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of this gesture. He had acted without thought for reward, yet here it was, the universe responding in a way that left him humbled. The girl stepped forward, her small frame framed by the rising sun, and placed a delicate charm in Jake's hand. "For bravery," she said softly. The simplicity of the words struck him like a bolt of lightning. Her gratitude, unpolished and sincere, carried more weight than any words of kings or councils. He looked at her, truly looked, and saw not just fear or relief, but a quiet strength that belied her age. There was resilience there, a spark that had survived the river's fury. And he realized that the act of saving her had also been a lesson for him, a reminder of the depth of courage that existed in every human being. The tribes formed a circle around them, their chants low and melodic, blending with the river's gentle rush. The sound was hypnotic, ancient, and filled with a power that Jake could not fully comprehend. He watched as the girl moved among her people, her initial shyness giving way to comfort and recognition. She laughed softly, the sound carrying across the riverbank, a melody that seemed to bind the morning, the tribes, and him together. Jake felt a sense of connection, unlike anything he had experienced in years of wandering alone. The world, vast and unpredictable, had revealed a moment of profound unity, and he was a part of it. As the morning progressed, the elder spoke again, explaining the significance of the gifts, the customs, and the unity of the tribes. Jake listened intently, absorbing what he could, realizing that he was witnessing not just gratitude, but a cultural ritual that had been practiced for generations. Every movement, every gesture, every offering carried meaning, and he felt honored to be included, even as an outsider. The girl returned to his side occasionally, whispering small explanations, her trust in him palpable. It was clear that his actions had created a bridge between him and the girl, and between him and 5 proud tribes. Hours passed and the sun climbed higher, its warmth bathing the valley. The tribes eventually began their preparations to leave, their gifts carefully packed, their horses ready to carry them home. Jake felt a pang of sadness. The moment had been fleeting, ephemeral, yet its impact would linger forever. The elder approached one last time, placing a hand on Jake's shoulder. "You are always welcome here," he said, his eyes meeting Jake's with a depth of sincerity that made the words feel eternal. Jake nodded, unable to respond adequately, the weight of the morning pressing upon him. As the riders mounted and began to disappear into the horizon, Jake stood silently, watching the dust clouds rise and fade. The girl, now smiling fully, turned to him. "They are my family," she said simply. Her words carried both pride and warmth, and Jake realized that the connection he had witnessed, the bond of gratitude, trust, and bravery, would remain with him forever. He had come seeking solitude, drifting through the wilderness, yet the river, the danger, and the tribes had shown him a different kind of path, one where courage and kindness created ripples far beyond what the eye could see. The river sparkled in the morning light, the valley filled with birdsong, and for the first time in a long while, Jake felt a sense of purpose beyond himself. He had acted without thought for reward, yet reward had found him in ways he could never have imagined. And as the girl ran ahead, laughing and calling back to him, he knew that this moment, this connection, would stay with him, an indelible mark on the landscape of his life, a reminder that even in the wild, even in danger, acts of bravery could shape destinies, bridge worlds, and change hearts forever. The morning sun climbed higher in the sky, spilling golden light across the valley, and casting long shadows from the horses and riders that had only recently departed. The girl's laughter still echoed faintly in Jake's ears, a joyful sound mingling with the gentle rush of the river. Yet as he watched the distant horizon, he realized that the moment of gratitude had opened something deeper than mere thanks. It had unlocked a bridge between worlds, one that now required attention, understanding, and care. He shifted the feathered charm in his hand, feeling its delicate weight, and realized that it was more than a simple trinket. It was a symbol of trust, of connection, and of responsibility. Jake turned to the girl, whose dark eyes sparkled in the sunlight, her small frame brimming with energy despite the events of the previous day. She ran toward him, bare feet pounding softly against the earth, and stopped just shy of his reach. "They will return someday," she said, her voice tinged with both certainty and a hint of wonder. "They said they would always watch over me. And now they watch over you too." Her words struck him, not just as a statement of fact, but as a revelation of something deeper, the intricate web of loyalty and honor that defined her people. Jake nodded, his throat tight with emotion, struggling to find words that could express what he felt. Words seemed small, inadequate in the presence of such overwhelming sincerity. He helped her settle near the riverbank once more, scanning the surrounding area for signs of danger. Though the immediate threat had passed, the wilderness was never truly forgiving, and Jake had learned that vigilance was a form of survival. The river sparkled and sang in the morning sun, its currents now gentle, reflecting the deep blues of the sky above. The girl's presence was calming, yet at the same time, her laughter and movement reminded him of the fragility of life, the ease with which danger could return, the sudden shifts in fortune that the wilderness imposed upon those who dared to wander. Suddenly, the sound of hoofbeats again reached Jake's ears, this time closer and different, more deliberate, ceremonial, almost reverent. He stiffened, sensing the difference immediately. The girl's eyes widened and she clutched his arm. "They're coming back," she whispered, a mixture of awe and nervous anticipation in her voice. Jake's heart rate quickened. The previous encounter had been one of gratitude, but what would this return signify? He had no frame of reference for the complex customs and traditions of her people, only an instinctive hope that their return was a positive omen. He signaled the girl to stay close, and together, they stepped slightly back from the riverbank, letting the approaching riders emerge fully into view. As they drew near, Jake could see the details more clearly. The intricate patterns painted on faces, the elaborate headdresses adorned with feathers, beads, and shells, the horses' tack, decorated with symbols that spoke of lineage and tradition. It was a procession unlike anything he had ever witnessed, a silent declaration of respect and continuity. 5 distinct tribes, united in their purpose, moved with a fluid coordination that seemed almost choreographed, a living testament to centuries of practice and cultural memory. The elder who had first addressed Jake now led the procession, his eyes meeting Jake's once more with a steady, measured gaze. The tribes halted a few yards from where Jake and the girl stood, forming a wide circle around them. The elder dismounted, his movements deliberate and dignified. He approached Jake, pausing several feet away, and spoke with a voice that carried the weight of authority and warmth simultaneously. "You have saved a life precious to all of us," he said, his eyes locking onto Jake's. "For this we bring our gifts, our respect, and—" The elder spoke again, explaining the significance of the gifts in a language he could only partially comprehend, yet the meaning transcended words. He gestured toward the river, toward the sky, toward the girl, and spoke of life, survival, honor, and the bonds that tie people together across generations. Jake listened intently, piecing together the essence of the message. His actions had created ripples, not just in her life, but in the lives of many. The interconnectedness of bravery and gratitude was being made tangible before him, in the presence of these tribes and their ceremonial gifts. As the morning progressed, the girl's confidence grew. She moved among her people with ease, explaining, translating, and connecting, her laughter ringing out like a melody. Jake observed her closely, noting the resilience and grace that had carried her through the river's deadly current. She was a bridge herself, guiding him into understanding, helping him navigate the complex rituals, and showing him the depth of trust that had been placed in him. In watching her, he saw not just a child he had saved, but a young woman of remarkable spirit and determination. Hours passed, and the sun reached its zenith, casting sharp shadows across the valley. The tribes began to prepare for departure, carefully packing their gifts and signaling to their horses. Jake felt a pang of melancholy. The connection he had experienced was profound yet fleeting. The elder approached him one final time, placing a hand on his shoulder with quiet gravity. "You are always welcome among us," he said. "Your courage has become part of our story, and the story will endure." Jake nodded, understanding fully the weight of the elder's words. This was not a casual statement. It was a lifelong acknowledgement, a mark of honor that transcended time and circumstance. The girl ran forward, laughing and calling back to him, her presence infusing the morning with warmth and life. Jake felt a sense of belonging, rare and profound, as he watched her disappear briefly among the departing riders. He realized that his life of wandering, of solitary existence, had been forever altered. The bonds formed in these hours, the connection between courage and gratitude, between action and acknowledgement, would remain with him as a guiding force. The gifts, the charm, the trust, and the words of the elder were tangible manifestations of something far greater, the enduring power of human connection, forged in moments of extreme vulnerability and bravery. As the last of the tribes rode off, dust rising in the heat, Jake stood by the river, holding the feathered charm in his hand. The river sang its eternal song. The wind whispered through the trees, and the valley seemed to hold its breath as if acknowledging the moment's significance. The girl returned to his side, her dark eyes meeting his with a shared understanding, a bond forged in fire, water, and courage. She smiled, and he smiled back, knowing that the events of the morning had changed them both irrevocably. Jake led her along the riverbank once more, their steps synchronized, a silent promise of protection and understanding passing between them. He reflected on the lessons of the day: bravery without expectation, compassion without reward, and the profound ripple effects that a single act of courage could create. The charm in his hand, the laughter of the girl, and the fading dust of the departing tribes all served as reminders that the world was vast, unpredictable, and often perilous, but also filled with moments of beauty, connection, and unspoken gratitude. As evening approached, the valley bathed once more in golden light. Jake realized that this day marked a turning point. He had entered the wilderness seeking solitude, yet he had found something far richer, a bridge between worlds, a connection with a people whose traditions and values spoke to the deepest parts of his heart, and a bond with a young girl who had survived against impossible odds. The morning's events had unfolded like a living tapestry, each thread carefully woven, each gesture and word carrying weight and meaning beyond the immediate. And so, standing by the river, watching the last rays of sunlight glint off the water, Jake understood that the story was only beginning. The bonds formed here, the gifts, the gestures, the trust, and the acknowledgement were not fleeting. They were eternal, etched into the valley, into the river, and into the hearts of all involved. Courage and compassion had intertwined to create something that neither time nor distance could diminish. He looked at the girl who skipped stones across the river, her laughter echoing into the twilight, and he knew that he would carry this morning with him forever, a reminder that bravery, when paired with kindness, could shape destinies, unite worlds, and leave an indelible mark on the soul. The sun had climbed high into the sky, casting brilliant golden light over the valley, and the air was warm with the promise of a new day. Jake stood by the river, watching the water ripple and glint in the sunlight, thinking about everything that had transpired over the past 2 days. The desperate struggle to save the girl, the arrival of the tribes, their gifts and gratitude, and the bonds that had been formed in such extraordinary circumstances. The feathered charm rested in his hand, light yet heavy with meaning, and he realized that his life, once a path of solitude and wandering, had been irrevocably changed. The girl ran ahead along the riverbank, her laughter carrying across the valley like a melody that seemed to lift the very air. Jake smiled, a rare warmth spreading through his chest, feeling more alive than he had in years. She turned to him frequently, beckoning him forward, her dark eyes sparkling with a mixture of joy and mischief. Her resilience and spirit amazed him. In the face of danger, she had been brave and resourceful. In the presence of the tribes, she had been confident and graceful. And yet, beneath her strength, there was the innocence of youth, the fragile vulnerability that had first drawn him to act without hesitation. Jake followed her along the winding river path, noting the subtle signs of life around them, the birds flitting from branch to branch, the occasional deer peeking from the underbrush, and the soft rustle of the wind through the tall grasses. The wilderness, which had been a place of danger and isolation, now felt alive with possibility, as if it were celebrating the union of courage, compassion, and trust that had unfolded within its bounds. Each step he took was deliberate, measured, yet filled with newfound purpose. He was no longer simply wandering. He was connected, responsible, and profoundly aware of the impact of his actions. The girl paused near a cluster of wildflowers growing by the river's edge, plucking a few and weaving them into a small garland. She held it out to him, her eyes serious yet playful. "For you," she said softly, her voice carrying a sincerity that went beyond words. Jake accepted the garland, feeling its delicate texture and fragrant scent, and placed it carefully around his neck. The gesture, simple yet profound, symbolized the bond that had been forged between them. A bond born of trust, shared danger, and mutual respect. It was a reminder that life was not only about survival, but about the connections we create and the lives we touch along the way. They continued along the river, the water flowing steadily beside them, its gentle current a soothing counterpoint to the turbulent events that had occurred. Jake reflected on the lessons he had learned. Bravery was not about recognition or reward, but about action in the face of danger. Kindness had a power far greater than any material wealth, and the bonds forged through trust and courage could transcend cultural boundaries, connecting people in ways that words alone could not express. Each moment with the girl reinforced these truths, and he felt a deep gratitude for the unexpected journey that had brought them together. As the day progressed, the sound of hoofbeats approached once more, this time faint and distant yet unmistakable. Jake tensed instinctively, scanning the horizon. The girl noticed his alertness and took his hand, her touch grounding him. "It's okay," she said, her voice calm and assured. "They are coming to see us again." He nodded, trusting her judgment. The tribes had already shown him their gratitude and respect, and he sensed that this return was not one of obligation, but of continued connection, a reaffirmation of the bond that had been created through his act of bravery. The riders emerged from the mist along the riverbank, 5 tribes moving in coordinated formation, their horses' hooves pounding rhythmically against the earth. The sunlight caught the beads, feathers, and painted designs on their garments, creating a dazzling display of color and tradition. Jake's heart swelled with awe. He had witnessed their power and grace before, but now, in the context of this ongoing connection, their presence felt almost sacred, a living manifestation of honor, loyalty, and community. The girl squeezed his hand, her eyes bright with anticipation, and together they stepped forward to greet the riders. The elder, who had first approached him 2 days ago, rode at the forefront. His eyes, deep and knowing, met Jake's with a steady gaze. "You have proven yourself among us," he said, his voice resonant and calm. "For this we offer more than gifts. We offer our continued trust and friendship. You are part of our story now as we are part of yours." Jake's chest tightened with emotion. He had never imagined that his simple act of saving a life would carry such profound consequences. Words felt inadequate, yet he managed a bow of respect and gratitude, acknowledging the depth of the gesture without needing to articulate it fully. The tribes began presenting their gifts once more. The girl stepped forward again, placing another small charm into his hands. "For courage," she said, her voice steady and confident. so that you never forget what you have done. Jake examined the charm, noting the intricate details and the careful craftsmanship. It was more than a token. It was a symbol of shared experience, a tangible reminder of the bridge that had been formed between him and the tribes, between him and the girl. He felt an overwhelming sense of connection, a realization that his actions had created ripples far beyond what he could perceive, touching lives, hearts, and traditions in ways he would carry forever. The elder spoke once more, explaining the meaning of the gifts and the importance of maintaining the bond between their peoples. Though Jake could not understand every word, the intention was clear. Bravery and compassion had created a lasting connection, and it was now his responsibility to honor and uphold that connection. The girl translated the elder's words, her voice bridging the gap between cultures, making him understand the depth of what had transpired. She laughed softly, explaining small details with pride and joy, and Jake felt a warmth in his chest that went beyond gratitude. This was not simply about survival, it was about belonging, trust, and the enduring impact of human kindness. As the day waned, the tribes began their departure. Dust rose in the golden light, and the rhythmic pounding of hooves gradually faded into the distance. Jake and the girl watched them go, a sense of peaceful finality settling over the valley. The gifts, the gestures, the trust, and the acknowledgement were left behind, tangible reminders of the extraordinary events that had unfolded. The river flowed steadily, its gentle sound a soothing accompaniment to the emotions swirling in Jake's heart. He realized that the story was not ending, it was evolving, carrying forward in the lives of all involved, leaving a mark on the landscape, on the valley, and on his soul. The girl turned to him, her dark eyes filled with gratitude and joy. "They will always be with us," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of certainty and hope. "In spirit, in memory, and in trust. And now they are part of your story too." Jake nodded, understanding the profound truth in her words. He had come seeking solitude and found connection. He had acted to save a life and discovered a bridge between worlds. The morning's events, the tribe's gratitude, and the girl's presence had transformed him, leaving him with a sense of purpose, belonging, and enduring responsibility. As evening approached, the valley glowed in the soft light of the setting sun. The girl skipped stones across the river, her laughter echoing through the trees, and Jake stood silently, watching her with a mixture of pride, admiration, and affection. He realized that the wilderness, once a place of danger and isolation, had become a sanctuary of connection, courage, and human kindness. Each ripple in the river, each rustle of leaves, and each fleeting shadow carried with it the memory of what had transpired, and Jake knew that he would carry these moments with him for the rest of his life. He knelt beside the girl, brushing dirt from her clothes, and she leaned against him, trusting and confident. "We are never truly alone," she said softly, her voice carrying a wisdom beyond her years. "Even in the wilderness, even in danger, there are bonds that cannot be broken, acts of courage that are remembered, and kindness that returns to you." Jake smiled, his heart full, realizing that she spoke the truth. The events of the past days had proven that courage, compassion, and trust were powerful forces, capable of shaping destinies, bridging worlds, and leaving an indelible mark on the human heart. As night fell, stars began to pierce the darkening sky, twinkling like distant beacons of hope. The girl lay down on the soft grass, resting her head against a fallen log while Jake kept watch near the river, the firelight flickering across his face. He thought of the tribes, their gifts, their words, and their presence, and felt a deep, abiding gratitude. The wilderness, once a place of uncertainty and danger, now felt like a place of profound beauty, a living testament to the enduring power of courage, kindness, and human connection. And as the night stretched on, the river flowing quietly beside them, Jake realized the truth. Bravery and compassion, once given freely, returned to you in ways unimaginable. The girl's laughter, the tribe's trust, and the bonds forged in the river's peril would remain with him forever, shaping the rest of his life. He smiled, knowing that this story, their story, was not merely about survival. It was about connection, legacy, and the extraordinary impact of a single act of courage on the vast, unpredictable tapestry of life.